Oh, this is a lovely lay.
Sorry, it's a lovely what?
Lay.
Flat lay.
Except it's not flat.
It's angular. Multiple angles.
For the purpose of the podcast.
Because cubes.
In it. Cubes in it. Okay.
A 1, a 2, a 1, 2, 3.
Woo!
Hello,
everybody,
and welcome back to the SketchPad
Pod.
What is that? Is that like an echo?
Okay, yeah, I guess
in my ear? Yeah. This is season 2, episode 6.
This is a second episode we're filming today, so we're quite exhausted.
Honor is feeling it now.
I'm feeling it.
So, if you don't know, this is the podcast where we talk about art, creativity, pop culture, all while making art in front of your eyes.
And
if you're watching the YouTube version.
If not, in your ears.
In your ears, yeah.
Through accidental ASMR.
Yes, exactly.
Fantastic. So today we're carrying on from our art movements throughout the years.
Yeah, so we started with Fauvism.
Today we're doing Cubism.
Oh, don't we love that?
We just do.
Like Honor said, this is our second podcast of the day. And I love how at the beginning of this season we were like, yeah, we're going to be prepped, we're going to be ready for every single episode, we're pre-filming, we are on it. And then it's like literally before we start, Honor's on her phone
screenshotting
info.
So last night Alicia texted me like, I've planned half of this episode and half of that episode, I'm so prepared. And I'm just there like, I've done nothing. I was like, no, done nothing.
Nothing.
Like, that's absolutely fine though. That's chill.
We'll go with it, you know?
So we've got a little setup in front of us. I might show the photo because that'll be useful for those watching. That's what our setup looks like. We've got a bottle, a rock, a candle holder, some wooden coaster, we've got some nuts, seed pod.
Actually, the photo you showed them is probably the angle that you're going to see it on the screen, but we're seeing it from the side.
For those listening, I showed a photo of the downwards angle, which is the exact same as the angle you can see.
Yeah, exactly.
Fantastic.
So, but the reason we've got still life is because it's a very typical thing for cubist painters to focus on as their subject matter, and we're just gonna make some cubist-esque work. I say esque
because we're not cubists. We'll
Love
try.
But I'm just going to be doing a quick pencil sketch, and then I'm going to do some oil pastels. I am just going to do a pen drawing of what I see and try and make it from slightly weird perspectives. Yeah.
That is the game plan for today.
Okay. And the game plan will be more obvious as we explain what cubism with lots of S's.
Multiple S's.
So the way we like to break this down, if this is your first movement episode, is that I am going to talk a little bit about the art history.
Alicia is a big art historian.
I'm a bit of an art history geek. I love it. It's my jam, it's my bread, it's my butter.
Absolutely not. We're never using that phrase again.
Oh, I'm sorry. But yeah, so we're going to do a bit of that, and then Honor is going to
bit of that.
Talk to us about some key artists within Cubism.
Movement.
Yeah.
I've got a pen in my mouth.
Which you'll probably have heard of some of them before.
Yeah.
If not, this will be exciting for you guys.
Yeah. Okay, so do you want to crack on?
I shall crack on.
Look at this, for anyone watching. Look how lovely this looks.
Thanks.
Wow.
I wrote this on a bench yesterday.
Oh, that's so artistic.
And shall we flip the page? Oh, there's more.
Basically a nice cream sketchbook with some ink writing.
Lovely.
Lovely.
It was the only pen I had on me. I'm not normally this bougie, but anyway. Cubism was a art movement between 1907 and 1914, which was founded in Paris by two very influential people that might come up later.
May or may not, depending on whether I talked about the right people.
Yeah. Pablo Picasso and George Braque. And so I'm going to just sort of break down what the movement was about.
Yes.
So their paintings like to focus on how 3D objects or perspectives could be reduced to a 2D surface. Whoa, we're going there already, guys, I know. So basically they were trying to reject the traditions of perspective, foreshortening and realistic interpretations of objects. So it's not going to look realistic before you guys go, oh, what are they doing? Just, we're having some fun here.
Supposedly, it's supposed to look like this.
It's supposed to look like this. That's what we're telling ourselves. And they, rather than observing from one perspective, cubists would depict objects or scenes from multiple angles. Now we're seeing why I have photos of this still life in multiple directions. And this created what is typically known as the fragmented surface of cubist works. If you've seen any cubist works in a gallery, you'll know what I mean. It's sort of made up of, on this showing images, triangular, cube-like, fragmentary pieces.
Hence
to the
canvas.
Name. Yeah. Which I will get onto. So they would later use letters, musical instruments. They like to use bottles, glasses. Sometimes they did faces or figures. Still lifes were also very popular.
Things with interesting textures, wasn't it?
Yes, yeah. All to come. Let's be honest.
Sorry.
No, it's absolutely fine. So the first painting.
It might just be a short podcast if I actually talk about everything you've planned to talk about.
No, it's all right. I'm impressed. You're like, I'm so prepared, and then you're like, I know this and this. But yeah, basically, the first painting that's considered cubist was Les Demoiselles d'Avignon.
Yes, I talk about that.
By Pablo Picasso. But it was not actually shown to the public till 1916. Because
when the movement had ended.
Yeah, when the movement ended. Because he thought it was going to be so shocking and revelation.
It surprises me that he thinks it was so shocking, because they've just had Fauvism, which was so shocking. Do you know what I mean? They're not that special. You know what I mean? I feel like they overestimated how much of a stir they might cause.
Sorry, could how what?
How
love that. But yeah, so Braque had previously been involved in the Fauvist movement, which focused on colour and painterly techniques, which had been inspired by artists like Gauguin, Van Gogh and Cézanne. But it's Cézanne that ended up inspiring Cubism, because his later works, if you've seen any of them or if you Google it, you'll see that his later works have this sort of fractured, starting to become more abstract representation of the landscape. And so this sparked the progression to Cubism, which had more of a focus on form and shape. So early Cubism, also known as Analytical Cubism, big words, basically they started to reject the use of colour in favour of more muted, darker tones, which I'm going to attempt to do today. And that was so that there was more of a focus on the main purpose of the form and shape and perspective, and they didn't want to distract from that. Coming back to how the movement got its name, the term cubist was first coined by critique Louis Vauxelles. I think I mentioned...
I thought you were looking at me for pronunciation. I was like, mate.
She was like, don't do it.
Don't do it. Yeah. No idea.
I think I mentioned Vauxelles in the last movement episode. He was around for a while. But anyway, he was pretty big in the Paris art scene. And he went to an exhibition of Braque landscapes, and they were described as though they were comprised of cubes, hence cubism. Na 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 na. Love that. By 1910/1911, the movement had more exposure, meaning that more artists were becoming interested and wanting to join the gang, just get in on the action. Also, Analytical Cubism, that ran from 1910 to 1912. So you have, before that was Proto-Cubism, so that was just when Picasso and Braque were experimenting. That's sort of 1907 to 1910. Analytical Cubism, 1910 to 1912. And then Synthetic Cubism from 1912 to 1914. And so I'm just going to try and break down the main differences between synthetic and analytical, because those are really like the most important ones. So analytical was focusing on the breaking down of forms, right angles and straight lines, muted or monochromatic colour palettes, multiple viewpoints, and often the works were oil paintings, hence why I decided to do oil pastels today. And synthetic cubism then moved into collage. It used text. Colour became a little bit more prevalent as it was used to emphasise the contrasting viewpoints and the different shadows and things were used. And also there was a big importance on the contrast of smooth and rough surfaces. And just to sum it all up, the end of Cubism, that was because, as we all know, if we've studied history, 1914, we're starting World War One. So many of the artists, including Braque, were called for duty. And so there wasn't really enough artists to keep the movement going. But Cubism itself would influence many other movements, such as Futurism, which we might do an episode on, abstraction, and abstract expressionism.
And how does it influence then? Does it just influence the way artists work off each other, sort of thing?
So you'll find that in, say, Futurism, there's definitely that sort of fragmentary nature in the work, but they start to use different drawing techniques, but they use that sort of fragmentation as a way to focus on movement, so they weren't so much looking at different perspectives, but on actual using that sort of style to create something different. But also it was the start of being able to break down forms and just play around with conventions of what could be called art and what you could put onto canvas, that it didn't have to be realistic. And so that is why I guess movements such as abstract expressionism, they liked that idea, and they were like, we're gonna break it down even further so that we're not even looking at anything when we make the work.
Yeah, that's really cool.
But yeah.
And just a little quick question. Do movements overlap? So is there a specific, this is the start of Cubism, this is the end of Fauvism? Or is it this is Fauvism petering out and Cubism starting to appear? There
would have definitely been some overlap. I'm sure there would still be artists that had worked in a set style for a long amount of time, and it's not going to be a complete halt. Also, you've got to think about location. Just so happens that the ones we've discussed, Fauvism and Cubism, they were happening in France. So they did more or less chronologically blend into one another. But I don't know if we might do an episode on it. German Expressionism was happening in Germany, and so that's really can overlap with other movements that were happening in France. So, and then if we look at Futurism, that happened in Italy. So there will be overlap where it's different artists exploring different things.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, should we have a little break and then I will start to talk about the pupil.
Love that.
Hello.
We're back.
We're back and we're better than ever.
Hope
I
you
say
enjoyed
that
that
every
break.
single time after
Every
a break.
single
every
time.
single time. It's kind of second nature. Right, so little art update. I've done half, a third maybe, of the still life image in sort of random blocky type things.
Yeah.
That is as good as the description's going to get.
It's great. I have drawn out some interesting shapes and I'm now trying to fill it in with my oil pastel. It's not looking great, we're going to be honest, but
to be fair, you haven't really done enough for it to look anything.
But
I'm about to
hopefully-
stop because as we learnt last time we talked about fauvism, I can't really multitask.
Yeah, this was my problem. I was talking too much, so I couldn't really focus on, blending or anything like that. So I'm gonna focus on doing some more, and I'm just gonna focus
start
on
talking. Okay, so the two main people who are known to be very influential in Cubism are Pablo Picasso and Georges Braque.
Lovely.
Yeah, fantastic. That's that. Thanks for listening. So, it is Braque, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, Braque, nice. So Picasso and Braque brought together different views of subjects in the same picture, resulting in paintings that appear fragmented and abstract. So, basically, Picasso and Braque started to paint things from different viewpoints, and particularly Picasso was inspired by African masks, which were non-naturalistic and highly stylized. So the accumulation of all this resulted in Cubism as a thing. So as a bit of a background, I'm going to tell you about each artist. So Picasso was born in Malaga in October 1881. He was the son of an art teacher. Hang on, no.
Oh.
Yeah, no, we're good. We're
good.
good. It's cool. What I'm reading from. Oh, hello.
Hello.
We're just filming. Mum's upstairs having a nap.
Right, that's nice. I'll bring the shopping in then, shall
Do you need help?
I? Are you actually filming at the moment?
Yeah.
Right, no, that's fine.
We got like 20 minutes left and then I can help you.
That's fine, I'll unload the car afterwards.
Where are you unloading it?
I'll bring it through the back.
Okay. I'll shut the lounge door.
And the front door.
We just sort of left the front door open.
Why?
I don't know. I might just start that sentence again.
Mhm.
Sorry. So, Pablo Picasso was born in Malaga in October 1881 and was the son of an art teacher. He grew up in Barcelona, and it says he showed artistic talent from an early age. In early 1900s, he moved like in between France and Spain before finally settling in Paris in 1904, so just before the start of the Cubism movement.
Yeah.
He experimented with a number of styles and produced his own original ones reflected in his blue and rose periods, which essentially are the colours.
The colours he used.
The colour palette he used.
Yeah.
With like obviously blue being quite blue tones. That was completely unnecessary. Thanks, Honor.
we loved it. We loved it.
So in 1907 he painted Les Demoiselles d'Avignon.
Yes.
Which is, for those watching this painting, it's a very famous one for those listening, of basically naked ladies in sort of various slightly contorted poses, and he's using a lot of oranges and that kind of thing to paint them, and it's very 2D, which obviously has hints of cubism. So this piece of work like introduced the new major style cubism. He worked closely with Braque in the development of this style, and Picasso's invention of the collage, which included attaching pieces of cloth, newspaper or advertising to his paintings, was another very influential part of cubism. So that's that. An interesting quote from Picasso is, "A head is a matter of eyes, nose, mouth, which can be distributed in any way you like." So it kind of shows the way he looked at sort of an image and didn't feel the need to have it in a particular way.
Exactly, yeah.
And so Picasso was motivated by Henri Matisse's Fauves work to explore a more radical style. And then Georges Braque was a Parisian painter from the 20th century, as we know. He also did work which touched on Impressionism, Fauvism, and all this, because as we've discovered, it's not just these painters were part of this movement, it's because all these movements we are actually closer together.
Yeah, and they all influence each other.
And all influence each other.
One movement might be like embracing something another movement's done, or completely rejecting it and being like, no, this is not the way we should be making
And it's not that one artist sticks to one movement for the rest of their life. It's like they are all inspired by each other. So Braque was a house painter. He was a decorator and painter who attended art classes in the evenings, and his early work was impressionistic, but he was influenced by the work of the Fauves and adopted a more Fauvist style. But then in 1908 he began to use different geometry and simultaneous perspectives to develop his more cubist work.
Nice. Did you look at all at the relationship that Braque and Picasso had?
Oh, no.
So they worked very closely together in the sense of, I think there's a few years where they, I think they lived like either together or like next door to each other. And I mean, I don't know whether there was any rivalry, but it obviously, I think Picasso is the bigger name. It's
I did see something about that.
So
how Braque was sort of slightly pushed under the rug a bit by Picasso.
Yeah, and the thing is, then Picasso, obviously, he's gone on to do other things that I think we're all aware, you know, of Picasso's work. He just had a big retrospective.
It's just the way
Tate.
some people just create a bigger name.
Yeah, but also the weird thing though is that it's not that Picasso was making stuff that Georges Braque wasn't making. In fact, the thing was, their works at that point in their career are so similar that
they're
sometimes
often indistinguishable.
Yeah, art critics have a real tough time trying to pick out who did what.
Who's.
Because one work wouldn't sort of be finished until the other person had okayed it and been like, yeah, that's cubist, we're happy with that. Because they really took this sort of motto of creating a new art style and art movement seriously.
Yeah, which must have been really gutting for Braque in that they were doing such similar work that his just wasn't recognised in the same scale that Picasso's was.
So, you know, that's the main message of this podcast. Everyone should feel sorry for Braque.
So, what are your thoughts on Cubism? Being the incredible figures in the art world that we are, obviously our opinion on Cubism really matters.
It's going to change the whole shape of
history. Yeah.
I don't know, it's not something that I normally do myself, but it's something that I used to like look at and go, whoa, that's really cool, but I didn't understand that it was multiple perspectives. That's something that I learned over time, and I think it's a lot more impressive once you start to understand the different like layers that they of the work.
I think it's something that we can, obviously as we're doing today, try and attempt the style. But for actually the artists back then, especially obviously Picasso and Braque, who were literally creating this style, it's incredible the way they didn't just like go, okay, today we're gonna try and do a cubist work, so we'll look at things from a different perspective. They sort of said like, what if we did look at things from a different perspective? Like, I think that's really amazing.
That is, and it's just, I think it's something that should be appreciated, and like I said, it did inspire loads of different other artists, and it still inspires artists today. It's not necessarily my main source of reference when I'm making a new artwork, but I think it's always good to like try out these different techniques and things.
Yeah, exactly.
It just loosens you up and provides
fun,
different ways of looking at things. And it can be a bit of fun.
Fantastic.
And shall we just quickly wrap up on where our art is at the moment?
So mine is essentially the same as when we last did an update, because I talked in between.
Yes.
So I've just carried on. I've got this so far, which is half a still life in various blocks and things. I don't know. Same with Fauvism. It's not that I'm not happy with it. It's just that it's not something to me that looks like, wow, like that took a lot of time, like that took a lot of my skill. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's sort of just like, okay, like I attempted that in a style that I would never usually use. Like that kind of looks quite cool. I guess I got a little bit of the style in it, like
you learned something from doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So in that sense, I'm not disappointed with my work, but I'm also not like, wow,
it's
new
a
favourite piece.
Yeah. I would sort of say I feel the same. I can lift mine up maybe to try and show some of it a bit better, but basically I was trying to do lots of different angles. It's got a little bit messy, but I like the overall
I really like the colours.
It.
It's like earthen oranges and purple, which is a really interesting colour palette.
Perhaps the composition is not the best. I might crop it.
You just cut the paper.
We just imagine it like that, guys, and it's really, it's getting somewhere. I don't think it's something that I'm going to work on too much more.
That's fair.
But obviously there will be a picture of it on the Instagram along with honours
at the SketchPad Pod.
At the SketchPad Pod.
In the meantime, if you haven't checked out our other podcast episodes, we're on most podcast platforms. We're on YouTube if you want to watch the visual as well, because we do obviously art along with this. We have a petty pod that came out in the middle of August, which is us doing some stone stacking on the beach.
How cute does that sound?
Which talking about childhood memories and stuff. So if you haven't listened to that one,
there's
watch
so
that one.
much more to see.
That one's good.
But yeah, and just give us a comment on the Instagram, on YouTube, what you think about cubism. Do you like it? Do you hate it? Are you gonna try it yourself?
Yeah,
let us know.
I hope you learnt something new. I certainly did, because obviously Alicia knows a bit about these movements from art history before. I've got absolutely no idea. Probably comes across, but never mind. Thank you very much for listening. Honor and Elaoise are out.
Bye.
Bye, Felicia.